Hello, this is the hardcore legend Mick Foley, and you are listening to Putting You Over. Yeah.
This guy's called the Standing Streamer. Real stand-up kind of guy.
Hey, everybody, Brian Zane from Wrestling with Regret. You're watching Putting You Over.
All right, everybody, welcome. Putting You Over. Special time, special edition. Got my coffee. Hopefully people can hear me. We're good. I think Nikita is here. Nikita Koloff, NWA legend. We're going to speak to him now. And hopefully my kids don't interrupt. So let me go see if he's over there. It's 9:55. I told him to be in at 9:55. Let me just double check. I told him to be in. I asked him to be in politely. I'm coming, Mr. Koloff. Hold on.
No worries, young man. Take your time. We're a couple minutes ahead of schedule.
We're okay. We're fine. We're actually, we're a couple minutes ahead. We were going to start at 10. But yeah, I love the background. Looks great.
Thank you.
You can hear me
Appreciate
fine?
it.
Everything is good?
I can. You can hear me okay?
Yeah, sound phenomenal to me. But so basically, we're live right now on Twitch, and I try to do something unique on Twitch, different. And I do all the shows live there, and then what I do is I'll download it, edit them, cut them up, push them out to all the podcast platforms and YouTube and all that stuff. Just keeping myself busy, man. I got a house full of ladies, 3 daughters, 1 wife. It's keeps my mind at ease.
3 daughters and a wife. Yeah, I'm familiar with that. I raised 4 girls of my own, so I get it.
Yeah.
Swimming in the estrogen ocean. I know what that's like.
Yeah, right. But so we can get started now. We're live anyways. The first thing I want to say is thank you, first of all, for going out of your way to sit down with me and do this show. You probably, I'm nothing from no one, and I really appreciate it. So.
I appreciate the opportunity, but I'm an encourager, so I want to encourage you and say you're nothing from no one. You're someone and who's making an impact and a difference and
doing what I can.
All of us.
Yeah.
And doing what we can. That's right. Just having our small role in the bigger picture.
That's right. Well said. And when I was preparing for this show, trying to take some notes and stuff, I said to myself, I just don't want to ask the same questions I'm sure you've heard a million times. And I said to myself, well, he's been doing this for so long, I probably can't. There's probably no possible way I could. So I'm going to do the best, and hopefully something comes from that.
Absolutely it will. Let's roll, man.
Yeah, you're NWA Hall of Famer. Your resume speaks for itself. You went from, we'll do a quick rundown, Crockett Promotions to WCW to, late in your career, the NWA/TNA. version and whatnot. But what always intrigues me is how does the Russian Nightmare go from football, because you wanted to be a pro football player, to wrestling? How does that start? How's that come about?
Yeah, of course, let me just say up front, if people want the full story,
Right.
I always just send them. They have a couple options. They can go to NikitaKoloff.com, or they can pick up a copy of Nikita: A Tale of the Ring and Redemption, the last book that I wrote, the biography, and not only get the full story from all the way back into my early days in Minneapolis, Moscow, Minnesota, but but if they're a wrestling fan of to any degree, William Murdoch, who did the book with me, is a wrestling historian, and we take kind of the roots of wrestling all the way back to the 1800s.
Wow.
And give people kind of a glimpse into that whole world that they may not have otherwise realized. But all that said, so yeah, the Cliff Note version of that is growing up, dreaming of being a professional football player, of one day playing in the NFL, and on that path through high school and college, although I had a couple setbacks, I'd suffered a fractured leg my freshman year, overcame that setback. It didn't hold me back. I used it as a comeback to play 3 more years, only to fracture my other leg my senior year while being scouted by the NFL in college, Morehead State University up in northern Minnesota.
Yeah.
And had the confidence to overcome that injury because I'd already overcome it, 3 years prior. And so I was on the path of training for pro football tryout when some of my buddies, well, actually in my last days of college, some of my buddies had got into wrestling, Barry Darso,
Oh.
Ravishing Rick Rude, Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig, Animal and Hawk, the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors, just to name a few, who had already broke into that business and were engaged in that as I was wrapping up my college days and training for football tryout. And then I got a random call from Road Warrior Animal one morning and asking me about my thoughts about being a wrestler. And honestly, I really had not entertained the idea of it. I didn't grow up dreaming of being a wrestler.
Yeah,
It wasn't on the radar.
Yeah.
But when I saw their success and what they were doing, and there was a gap in there of time between my working out and my tryout, I thought, why not? Why not give it a shot? See if it works out. If it doesn't, I'll still pursue the path of football. And of course, the history speaks, as you said, for itself. I made a phone call to a promoter in Charlotte named Jim Crockett. Had a 5-minute conversation with him, sight unseen. There weren't cell phones in those days
No.
where you take a selfie and send a picture. And we discussed really in 5 minutes the idea of coming to Charlotte, North Carolina, where I'd never been, entering the business of professional wrestling, which I never had considered prior, with no experience, no amateur wrestling background, no professional training. I mean, I didn't go through any training schools or any of that. I just showed up the day Jim Crockett said to be in his office.
Wow, and he struck gold.
Well, fortunately for me, and I guess for him, I was able to. He handed me the ball.
Yep.
I was able to carry it and run with it, as Don Kernodle and Ivan Koloff had said many times during those early days. And even now, I talk to Don from time to time, and he's like, "Man, we just threw you. Talk about being thrown into the fire. I was thrust into the ring in Raleigh, North Carolina, in the Dorton Arena with on a television match, never having been in a ring before. And of course, that was my initiation. And then for the next 2-3 months, got to the towns early with Don and Ivan, and They would bump all over the ring for me, teaching me the mechanics of wrestling. I'd have a short match, very short. Ivan would sit in my corner. I'd sit in their corner. They were the world tag champions. Yep. And then on the way home, we would talk about the old school psychology of wrestling. So mechanics before the night began, psychology on the way home, and that's how I learned the art of wrestling.
And the psychology aspect of wrestling is just as important, if not more, to the character and what we see in the ring. I mean, I've never been there, but I've been around enough wrestlers to learn that. So those car rides home must have been just like phenomenal conversations and talk.
Well, priceless. And of course, you know, and being trained by Don Cornotto and Ivan Koloff, and eventually even coming under the tutelage of the American Dream, Dr. Rose, the Tower of Power, to tweet to be power, if you will. Yeah. You know, I had invaluable lessons to learn. Even guys in the ring, the Nature Boy Ric Flair, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, legendary in the Mid-Atlantic, Johnny Weaver, Rufus R. Freight Train Jones. I mean, Mark and Jay Youngblood. I mean, the list really goes on and on of who I had the privilege of being in the ring with. Dory Funk Jr.
Yeah.
I mean, there were so many legendary guys early in my career that I was able to learn from. And that's a lost art, really. And what I mean by that is, in those days, I don't think people realized there weren't script writers. They weren't writing our interviews. They were not writing our matches from start to finish. When you watch an interview in those days, it's at least for me, I'll just speak for myself.
Yeah.
It was 100% spontaneous, that interview. When you watch a match in those days, there was a predetermined outcome, but if I'm wrestling Ric Flair for an hour, there's about 57 minutes of that match that are not scripted. It is spontaneous. That was the art of psychology that's really been lost through writers, writing interviews, writing matches, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, we don't see as much of that anymore, or at least from what I hear, we don't. But what's that like? How you get in the ring with a Ric Flair, and you have bullet points for that match, and then it just plays out the way it does. Who was the easiest to go through a match with in that circumstance?
Well, you know, really, I look back on it. The majority of guys that I worked with, that I wrestled with, were just what I would call consummate professionals. I mean, you know, there might have been a handful of guys you maybe struggle with. Maybe your personalities clash, and because believe it or not, we aren't all friends. You know, we try to be professional, especially when you step in the ring and you're working against each other, because there is a lot of trust involved there when you're letting guys pile drive you and suplex you and body slam you and all those sorts of things. But I would say that the majority of the guys I worked with it wasn't a struggle. Let me say it that way. It was not a struggle. Again, whether it was Sting or Lex Luger or Steve Austin or Rick Rude or, of course, Ric Flair, Magnum TA. He and I had some of the best chemistry together because we had very similar snug styles of working, and which brought a real sense of realism to the matches. And that was kind of my mindset was yes, it's entertainment, but at the same time, my goal was, you know, for the fan to walk away and feel like they got their money's worth in watching my match.
I can remember, I'm 40 years old, and I can remember the Superpower feud with the Horsemen, and I can remember the Best of 7 series, I believe, with Magnum TA. And I'll tell you what, I've never been more scared of the Russian Nightmare. I can just remember, I remember it as clear as day, just being like when I would see you, just like I I was young at the time, and I'm like scared, literally. And now as I think back to it, I was like, man, that worked. What they were doing, what he was doing, was great. Was working for what they wanted to.
Yeah, the persona that we wanted to portray. Yes, and part of that, and believe me when I say you're not the first. You're the first of many who have voiced that very something. You're like, dude, man, you scared the heck out of me as a kid, man. I was, whether they were at an arena or even just watching it on television, right? But part of that was, of course, my mindset, and as folks could tell in watching the match, I was, and still really am to this day, a pretty intense guy. I mean, if I'm doing something, I'm going to put all my heart into it. I'm going to put everything I have into it. And that's what I say, even in the matches. I mean, from opening bell to closing bell to an interview on an interview set, my intent was to give it everything I had. And I was very intentional in doing that, and very intense, which is what led to, your response of being afraid of the Russian nightmare, right?
Yeah. It makes my hair stand up when I hear that.
Hey, by the way, I can't tell you how many people will message me and go, dude, what does that mean? And it's just an expression that I put out there, kind of, what is this? Or what's going on? Kind of thing.
And that's how it came off.
Like, they're like, I don't even know how to spell that. I go, well, neither do I really, but anyway.
And I'm gonna go back and touch one more thing about your history, and then we'll move on to stuff today. So when I was doing the research, which I'm gonna NikitaKoloff.com, pick up the book there, because from what you just said, I definitely have to read that. But based on my notes here, did the WWF, did Vince ever reach out to you to wrangle you in?
No, I mean,
you had friends with Rude and Henning and Darso.
Yeah. No, I met Vince one time in a gym in Las Vegas. We were running. He was running a show in town that night. We were running a show in town that night, and ran into him in the gym. Had a very cordial, brief conversation with him there. Really, my only conversation with him during my wrestling days. And when Darso told me he was going to leave, we had brought him into the Carolinas as Crusher Khrushchev.
Yep.
And he's like, hey, I'm heading up to New York. Why don't you go with me? We'll form this team called Demolition. And, I didn't give it a lot of thought for a couple reasons. One, I really just felt like it was kind of a takeoff of the Road Warriors, Animal and Hawk.
Yep.
And I really, out of respect for Joe and Mike, really didn't want to do that. But also, I'd worked so hard on the Russian Nightmare character that I really didn't want to abandon that character for something else. And Jim Crockett gave me my break, the break of a lifetime, really, in an opportunity to again, with no experience. He took a risk, but at the same time, I capitalized on that. And for that reason, because Jim Crockett gave me that opportunity, I'm sure I could have negotiated, called, went up there, probably made 10 times the money I made. But you know what? Loyalty, anyone who knows me will understand that loyalty is a big thing with me. I mean, I'm loyal to the NWA to this day.
Yeah.
I love what Billy Corgan and Dave Lagan and the guys are doing with NWA Power. But loyalty was a big thing for me, and I was willing to stay with the NWA even for less money, just because of the break that Jim Crockett gave to me.
I was gonna say, as I was doing this research, I heard that a lot in other interviews. You're extremely loyal, and you're right. Crockett, he took you on sight unseen, as you said. And where could you have gone? Hogan USA, Russian Nightmare USSR. Where could that have been? Who knows? But sticking around with the NWA, and as you said, NWA Power, you're still loyal to them this day. What were your thoughts and feelings when you heard that Corgan was bringing that back.
I was excited, and even last year participating in their Crockett Cup, they brought the
Yep.
return of the Crockett Cup, and here in not far from my home actually in North Carolina, and to be able to participate in that, and then last December, go down and actually walk into the studio and film some things there in the studio, reintroducing the world television title belt that I held around my waist. And it just took me back to those days on 10th and Techwood, when we would walk in every Saturday morning for that studio audience and film 3 hours of TV for Saturday night at 6:05 and Sunday night. And so I hope that, that they're able to continue on and stick with their vision and maintain those grassroots approach that they're taking, because it's something different. It's different from the AWE, it's different from TNA, it's different from WWE. It's something different.
Yep.
And I think there's a lot of fans out there, at least my experience from all the the Legends autograph signings and things that I've done and continue to do, that there's a lot of fans out there that love that, have missed that, and are appreciating what Billy and Dave and Nick, all these and the guys are doing.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that. The fans get a bad rap, especially on Twitter. Wrestling fans on Twitter just are toxic. But your experience with signings and what you just said, there's a whole sector of fans that have been craving for this refreshing throwback NWA hour-long format. What's your experience with those type of fans and the signs? You said, they're coming off great, right?
Yeah, again, every town I go to, every place I go and sign autographs, and over the last 20 years, have said to me, man, I miss that golden era, that era that you were a part of. I miss that feel of not only the studio wrestling, but just the excitement and so I get it. Not every fan's gonna appreciate that, or it's not gonna appeal to every wrestler, and that's okay. That's why we've got the WWE. It's why we got now the AEW and the other organizations, Ring of Honor and others. And variety is good, and competition is good. Competition is healthy.
Yep.
And so if you can bring a variety of wrestling product to the marketplace, at least gives the fans the option or the opportunity to watch some different things. And my hope is, and even for myself, I appreciate what the WWE does. I'm not going to try to be critical of them. Vince McMahon has obviously been very successful in the promotion of WWE, and in my days WWF, and kudos to him for his marketing prowess and what he's been able to accomplish in taking it worldwide. And I'm grateful for the WWE network that continues to show some of my old matches and keeps my name out there, and so I'm thankful for that.
I was going to ask you if you kept up with the other products, the WWEs, the AEWs, MLWs, people like that. Do you keep up with them as much, or probably don't have time?
I don't really. Because of what I do now, it's not on the forefront of my radar. I'll catch up on kind of current affairs more when I'm out signing autographs, and people will kind of fill me in a little bit on that level. If I catch anything at all, it's going to be the NWA Power. And then on social media, you'll see bits and pieces and current affairs on social media. And although I don't spend a lot of time on social media, I kind of pick up on things that way. So just really through conversations, not so much my sitting down. Listen, I haven't had satellite or cable television in my home for 12 years. So.
I don't even have cable here either, which is amazing. But within today's day and age, you don't need cable. You have all sorts of streaming services, the network. My daughters can watch. Disney Plus is on 24/7 in my house. So
Yeah, YouTube, right? I
yeah,
mean, all the other outlets that we have now. So, but I limit my time in front of a screen anyway. I try to be very mindful of that.
yes. Um, to go back to the NWA Power, they got the Circle Squared, which is them given opportunities to, you know, I'm going to say independent wrestlers. They're not new. Some guys have been in the business a while. Some are more new. But you're involved in that. You're coaching Jeff Lewis, Neal, and Tyson Dean. How did that all come about too?
Well, I've known Jeff over the years and watched his work in the ring again because I've been on some of the shows signing autographs where he was performing and Jeff approached me a couple of years ago. And for anyone who may have saw some of their promos, maybe I don't know if they did or didn't, but all that to say, Jeff approached me a couple of years ago and said, "Hey, I'd really like to take my game to the next level. Have a few ideas," and then eventually Tyson Alexander Dean came into the picture, and I thought to myself, hey, I was coached by a couple of great guys,
Yep.
Ivan Koloff and Don Granotto. These guys, any elite athlete likes to, who has excelled to that level has had a coach. I mean, it just has. And so I look at these two guys, and both of them have experience under their belts. They're good at their craft, and yet they have a hunger and a desire to go to the next level. And so why not? Why not step in and share with them some of the knowledge and information and experience that I gained from Ivan, Don, Dusty, and others, and be able to try to help them take their game to the next level. And if they land a contract with NWA Power, that would just be an added blessing. But at very least, they could step their game up. And so I agreed to do that. And depending on what would unfold there, we've got some ideas that we're considering that I'm not at liberty to divulge at this time.
That's right.
But
Keep it
I'll just
kayfabe. I'm about that.
I'll keep it like old school. I'll keep people, how the show used to end. The TV show would end with a cliffhanger, getting you to come back next week to watch. So I'll leave it with that part of the conversation as a cliffhanger saying, what are these guys up to, Coach K and Tyson and Jeff? So let's just see what potentially could unfold in the future.
It was great. It's great because I saw you on NWA Power. You see you come out. It's such nostalgic, and you speaking. Promo wise, great. Like you said, unscripted stuff, which you don't get much these days anymore. Same thing with Jake Roberts over on AEW. It's just good to see. For anybody out there that may see this promo wise, do you have any advice for giving promos? Oh, did I lose him? Oh, there he is.
You were
I cut out?
phasing in and out just a little bit. Yeah, cut out a little bit. Just repeat the question.
Promo wise, you got any advice?
As far as
delivering a promo, we know some of the best promos are unscripted. Any advice for anyone out there?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, again, if you compare today's product with the era that I was a part of, again, and I'm basing this on fan comments, right? What
Right.
fans have said to me, even fan reaction in the arenas. I think a big part, I think a major difference is, again, the difference between something spontaneous and something that's scripted, and taking nothing away from the guys today who are handed a script and doing their best to deliver that interview or deliver that match. When it's unscripted, so to speak,
Yeah.
obviously there's some who are better at it than others. That's just reality. However, when you're speaking from really, in a sense, kind of from the heart, because it is spontaneous, it seems to come across with a more sense of realism than when you're just memorizing a script and delivering a script. Not that there's still not, you know, a passion or emotion in it, but it's a script. It's not. It's written by somebody else and handed to you. It's not your own thoughts. It's not coming from, you know, essentially from your heart in that way. And so the difficulty would be, depending on the organization you're working for, whether or not you have the liberty or the flexibility to do that. You know, that may not be there with certain organizations. They may say to you, hey, this is the way it is. You want to be a part of this organization, here's how we do it. And you either accept that or you don't.
Are there things in wrestling today that you see or you hear that's the same when you wrestled? And are there things different? Like what should we be seeing more of in wrestling, and what should we be seeing less of?
Well, and again, there's a variety of fans, and all of these different products appeal to different fans, and you know, everybody's going to have an opinion. So, you know, for me, again, what I personally like is the old school mentality, and part of the old school mentality was get the most out of the least. You know, in today's world, you know, fast-paced action, you know, 1,000 different moves in a matter of about 120 seconds. Yeah. In some cases, things are happening at such a rapid pace that it's hard for you to wrap your mind around it. And or talking to actually William Murdoch, who I mentioned, worked with me on my last book project. You know, the wrestling historian. You know, I was asking him about, you know, hey, did you watch WrestleMania, and what, you know, what are your thoughts? And all that said, his comments, which I think are very valid for many people today, is storylines. Storylines. And what I mean by that is, you know, when I was building up to the first Great American Bash against Ric Flair, it was about a 6-month buildup for that. Without really either of us having any kind of altercation, for the most part, leading into that evening of the Great American Bash. We took our time building that story, and Bill brought up, he brought up the matches between Jack and Jerry Briscoe and Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood, and how they took 2 years building that story. 2 years. And Jack and Jerry had both been NWA World Heavyweight Champions, but they had never been the NWA World Tag Team Champions. And so that was part of the story, as their quest to go after the World Tag Team titles. But 2 years, Bill said, they built that story. Well, it seems like nowadays stories are built in like 2 minutes.
Right.
and then blown off. Or one guy's wrestling the same guy 9 different times, over and over and over and over again. And it seems like in those days there were different tiers of wrestlers, which in today's world, all of them seem to be on the same tier, and which limits the future, the hope for a future superstar. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
That's what I don't know that they can go back to that. I don't know. I don't know.
It's tough.
Time will tell.
And one of the things I like or wish I could see more, it's weird. What I want to see more of is actually less wrestling. You have Raw has 3 hours every Monday. And then you have the NWA, and people like the NWA, people like MLW, they put on about an hour program, an hour show, and I think I actually take more out of the hour than I do the 3 hours.
I've heard more than one person say that, and again, I mean, Bill told me WrestleMania for the first time was like 2 nights, and it was
Yep.
like 4 hours each night.
Yeah.
That included the hour pre-show or
Yep.
something. I'm like, 8 hours. I'm like, wow. See, for me, hey, listen, I'm grateful that I had the opportunity I had, but I for one, I just don't want to sit in front of a television for 8 hours, and that's just me. Now, nothing against those who enjoy that, who love that. That's just me. And again, the old school mentality, my brother, was less equals more.
Yep.
And I did a tour across Canada 2-3 years ago, and we did 21 cities in 21 days.
Wow.
We covered 5,500 miles. It was pretty amazing because I'd never seen. Canada's beautiful. For all the Canucks out there, love your country, beautiful country. I got to see 19 cities, I think, that I had never been to, several provinces that I'd never traveled to. And it was interesting because on the first few days, a lot of these younger guys and even some of the gals on the card were coming to me saying, "Hey, did you watch my match? Do you, can you give me any pointers? Can you, you know?" And so I made it a point. In fact, one of the guys brought me a notebook and a pen because I said, "I can't remember all your matches, if I could write them down." So he brought me a notebook and a pen, So I did. I started writing down, watching all their matches, and shared a few thoughts that I thought would benefit them in their careers. And what was interesting was I said to several of them, I go, I can give you some pointers, but here's the deal. You have kind of a new school mentality. Yeah. I'm from the old school, and I don't know if you'll even listen to what I'm telling you. It would just be a waste of my breath. But that said, to their credit, some of them really, they took to heart what I said, and especially about the more equals less. Like, you're going out there trying to do 100 things.
Yeah, slow it
but
down.
Man, if you just slowed the match down and gave people a time to really, really mentally assent into it, I'm telling you, you get more response out of the fan if you did less than if you do more. And a few of them went out and implemented that, and it was fun because they'd come to me and they're like, "Oh my gosh, it worked." I mean, you were I go, "Well, just saying."
Just saying, I might know what I'm talking about.
It worked for many, many years, but prior to this new wave of doing things. But anyway, yeah, those are some thoughts.
You mentioned WrestleMania. We're all stuck inside and can't really do much for the most part. But I watched WrestleMania with the kids, and one thing I took away from it this year was because they had to tape it and they had to basically do studio wrestling in some of the Firefly Funhouse and Taker's Boneyard match, the cinematic display of a match. Do you think we may see more cinematic productions like WWE did with that?
Well, I mean, I'm sure it gave them thought for other possibilities for the future. Now, how well, and time will tell how well people will respond to it based on whatever they go, right, buy rates and all that sort of thing. Although, wrestling in an empty arena like that, obviously, in that world, it's a game of revenue, right?
Yep.
It's a game of revenue. And look, if there's not people there's a lot of lost revenue by, merchandise sales and concession sales and, all of that, ticket sales for the live audience. So I wouldn't ever see him going fully away from that, perhaps, but it may give them another option of doing some things in the future now, having had that experience.
Yeah, I think they won't go away from what they're used to based all on the revenue, the money. It's going to extend Taker's life as a performer, those type of matches. It was just interesting to see. But I want to transition a little bit into what you're doing right now with your ministry stuff. And try to do my best to relate that to wrestling because this is out of my area of quote unquote expertise. But you have people like HBK, AJ Styles, who have gone on, they've said that their faith means more than certain maybe programs or spots in the wrestling business. Do you think it's hard for somebody of Christian faith to be in the wrestling business and get those type of spots and have to say like, like they said, they're not going to do certain things. Is that challenging?
Sure, absolutely, because and of course, again, today's wrestling world is different from the
Right.
days gone by.
Yeah.
Where again, I'm not on the road with these guys nowadays. I mean, in my day, reflect back in my day. I mean, in 1986, for example, I had 454 matches.
Wow.
Wow. Do the math on that.
That's a lot of matches.
I had 454 matches, and so that was our lifestyle. I mean, it was a lifestyle of being on the road, and with that comes a lot of temptations, a lot of things at your disposal, and all of that. And so to be a Christ follower, for sure in those days was certainly a challenge. I'm not going to say it was impossible, but
Right.
it was a challenge. Now I don't, and I will say, I guess the difference would be in today's modern world, obviously the language has changed. And
Yeah.
by that meaning the language on all shows, not
Yep.
just wrestling shows, but on all shows, it has become, a little more, they've become a little more lenient with what can be said and what is said. It was to a degree kept a bit cleaner back in those days. But I do remember HBK, Sean, and of course AJ Styles. For the record, when I was helping, I did a few shows for, you mentioned the NWA
Yep.
/ TNA, and it's very early days. I did I think 4 shows for them to try to help them launch, and yes, Jared wanted me back in the ring. I'm like, dude, I am not putting the tights back on. I'm done. No, you can stand on the apron. I'm like, oh yeah, the Russian Nightmare standing on the apron and not even getting in the ring, right, in a 6-man match or something. He's like, I'm like, not happening. But anyway, and I used to do a little Bible study for before, that's when they were doing the pay-per-view every Wednesday night live.
Yep.
And I used to do about a 15-minute Bible study, and AJ was one of the guys who faithfully came every time I did that. And so I knew the young man had a pretty solid foundation, but that is a challenge for today, depending on who the promoter is, and to say, look, I'm not, this script has cussing in it, and I'm not going to cuss.
Right.
It's just I have a personal conviction I'm not going to cuss. So you got to change that, or a storyline, even if it is a 2-minute storyline,
Right.
a storyline that has something compromising in it that would compromise my faith, and then have to make that decision. It can be very challenging. And so kudos to those who stick by their guns and stick to their convictions, and don't give in to that just for a payday, or for
Right.
a paycheck.
Right.
And so, yeah, in response, it's but you know what? In any walk of life,
Yeah.
to be a Christ follower is challenging. In any walk of life, to do what you do these interviews. I mean, in any walk of life, no matter what you're doing, I mean, Jesus said, in this life you'll have trouble, you'll have tribulations. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be difficult and challenging, no matter whether it's wrestling or anything else.
Yeah. My daily life is literally challenging every day, especially that now we're home with all these ladies here, and I'm trying to homeschool, and I'm trying to do my work, my actual job as well. It is challenging. We had a question from David in Atlanta. He was wondering if fans, very religious fans, if they might struggle with their faith and their fandom as well, and if you had any advice for that.
I'm not sure I understand the question. If they struggle in their faith and
if they struggle, it's almost the same as HBK and AJ Styles. if they're a fan of wrestling and maybe something comes on that's, cursing or compromising, do you think
Gotcha.
fans struggle with that same aspect?
I would imagine so, and again, that's where personal
Yeah.
conviction has to kick in, right? I mean,
Yep.
whether it's a wrestling show, whether it's a movie. I mean, regardless of what it, what a television show. I mean, personal conviction has to kick in. Depending on your love for the Lord and how you want to honor Him is how I would address that in terms of your conviction. Is where you have to decide where you're going to draw the line and go, okay, and turn the channel or turn the TV off or
Yeah.
walk out of the movie theater. It just has to be on a level of personal conviction and what I find is because we're all at different places in our journey in life. Some have deeper convictions than others, and that's just a part of, I believe, the process of maturing as a Christ follower. I know for myself personally,
Yeah.
the more I fall in love with the Lord, the more I pursue this passionate relationship with Him, the less I want to, I guess I would say it this way, the less I want to do something that would compromise my witness as a Christ follower. And so I find this, the more mature I become, the stronger my relation becomes, the more I want to do things that pleased Him than please myself.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. Another question in the chat asks, are you working on any more books right now?
Actually, I am.
Oh man. He cut out. Oh. Maybe he'll come back. Oh, did we lose
You
him?
lose me?
Yep, you're back. You are. You're working on a new book?
So
Oh.
yeah, it's interesting they would ask. Yeah, I took a sabbatical two times last year up to the mountaintop, like literally to the mountaintop, and out of that came a brand new book that I am currently working on. It's going to be different from any of the others that I've done. I've done 3.
Yep.
Breaking the Chains was the very first one I did several years ago. That's kind of been out of circulation. I'm actually looking at rewriting that and bringing that back into circulation. I'm also writing this brand new one that hopefully we'll have out by the end of the year. And A Tale of the Ring of Redemption. Bill Murdoch and I are actually working. I've already written 4 or 5 new chapters for that book. And so hopefully again, by the end of the year or really sooner, we hope to have a new edition with new chapters and maybe even some new photos and things in that as well. Not to say that the original one that's out there right now and available is not good, because it is. We just wanted to bring it even more up to date as well. So brand new book, second edition of the last book, and hopefully a revision of the very first book. And since we have a lot of time, that's kind of been occupying some of my time.
You know what? That leads me. I wanted to ask you. Easter is coming up. I mean, it's tomorrow. We just had Good Friday. How are you going to be celebrating since people can't meet at church?
Yeah, well, it was interesting. I actually celebrated Passover on Wednesday night
Right.
with a Messianic Jewish friend of mine, Scott Volk, with the Passover Seder, and then Good Friday yesterday, just a time of reflection,
Yeah.
some good quiet time of self-reflection and where I'm at. And for me, I've considered there's a number of churches have. In fact, I spoke last Sunday at Palm Sunday, Hickory, North Carolina, at the Hills Church, and tag teamed with Pastor Justin Porter at their drive-in
Wow.
church. They have, yeah. And there was dozens and dozens of cars that came in for the service. They're doing that again tomorrow there in Hickory. If you're in the Hickory, North Carolina area,
Yeah.
the Hills 11 a.m. Drive in. Pastor Justin's got a great Easter message. And obviously there's tons and tons and tons of church services online. My own church, The Refuge, Pastor Jay Stewart, actually started last night, today, and tomorrow is broadcasting 11 different Easter services online, through media and technology. And so I haven't fully decided yet whether I'm going to physically go to a drive-in
Right.
church locally here in the community or dial in to a service online. I haven't made a final decision on that yet.
Let's move into. You want to tell us a little bit about Man Camp? What that's all about?
Well, yeah, the ministry as a whole, Koloff for Christ Ministries.
Yes, there you go.
And a simple, if you want to learn more, a little bit more about that, koloff.org and or mancamp.info is a ministry, a men's, the Lord really put men on my heart many, many years ago. I've been involved in men's ministry. So not only do I preach on Sunday mornings and travel around the world doing revivals and crusades, but I do a lot of men's events, men's dinners and lunches and breakfasts and conferences. And in 2015, Lex Luger, some people might know that name, the Total Package, actually lived with me for about 10 months in 2015. And out of that time together, we had already done quite a bit of men's ministry. You know, I gave my life to the Lord 17 October 1993 at an altar in Concord, North Carolina, after I left wrestling, having not grown up in the church, but just led to the altar that day, and it transformed my life. Lex, on April 23rd, 2006, a jail chaplain, Steve Baskins, in a hotel room, led him to the Lord and surrendering his life. And from that, he and I initiated just got reintroduced after about 11-year absence together, and have created an incredible bond and friendship. And he's really one of my biggest inspirations. Anyway, that said, Lex and I had this vision for doing conferences called Man Up, which is just a one-day conference that we do at the local church. And from that, a full 5-day catalyst in Kannapolis, North Carolina, Cedar Grove Retreat, called Man Camp. And we take small groups of men. We limit it to 24 men, and they come in from all over the country, from all backgrounds, whether they're a man in the marketplace, someone in ministry. It doesn't matter your background, as long as you're 18 years or older. You're invited to come and spend a few days with us, where we can really delve into what it looks like to be, I like to say, to be healthy. Of course, physically, him and I take our years of experience in physical health, mental health, emotional health, spiritual health. We try to look at, my tagline is this: we want to equip men to send them home, someone like yourself with 3 girls and a wife, to be, men of God, lead your family well, and just be healthy in all these areas of your life. And so it's a pretty powerful, impacting few days that we spend together at this Man Camp.
Excellent. Well said. And all those links, I've been posted them in the chat and in our little overlay here. It's down below. One thing I like to do on this show that I like to live by is I never want to keep anybody over an hour. We all have other things and to get to and all that fun stuff. So it's at the point of the show where I'm going to hand you the microphone now. You're unscripted. You can plug whatever you want, put yourself over. The floor is yours, Mr. Koloff.
Well, I just want to say that. I mean, we talked about a lot. We talked about the wrestling career. We've talked about, current affairs, what I'm doing now, my heart for ministry, my heart for people. I love the wrestling fan. One of the greatest joys for me now is when I go out to do these autograph signings, is hearing your stories, hearing how perhaps one of my matches influenced or impacted your life somehow, some way. You know, you talked about how I scared you to death.
Yeah.
While at the same time, I have others who said, wow, I got into weightlifting because of you. I mean, you were my inspiration, or I got into wrestling because of you, and now one of the greatest compliments too is people will come to me and not at these autograph signings, not necessarily talk about a match, but they'll say, man, you came to my church and you preached, and here it was the message that you preached 12 years ago, 15 years ago, 8 years ago. And so talk about being humbled and the ultimate compliment. You know, that's what means more to me than so many other things. I'm grateful. I'm thankful for the wrestling career that I had. I'm grateful to be able to still go out and mingle with the fans, meet the fans, and all the pastors that bring me in. Many of the churches I go speak at, they were wrestling fans. They grew up watching wrestling, and they found out I'm an evangelist. I'm a minister, and invite me into their church. So, you know, certainly for those in the listening audience, if you'd love for me to come to your community, if there's a church, your home church, or talk to your pastor, give them my website, give them the koloff.org website, and perhaps I can come to your area. Or let me say this too. I had some fun on social media a few weeks ago, and I said, hey, if you have a favorite memory, a favorite story, whether it was in church, school. I used to do school assemblies. I still do some, speak in schools. But if you heard me speak somewhere, or you have a favorite memory from a wrestling match I was involved in, shoot me an email, and here's why. Here's why. The revision I'm doing for A Tale of the Ring of Redemption, I'm going to include a chapter that has some of those stories.
Nice.
Some of those stories. So if you want to email me at Nikita, the letter S as in Sam, Nikita S Koloff at Gmail, your favorite memory of the Russian Nightmare. Again, whether it's in wrestling, whether it's at a church, whether it's school, email that story to me, and who knows, maybe your story will get included in that chapter. And I just a way that I want to honor some of the fans or some of the followers of Nikita Koloff out there. And I thank you for this time, really your invitation to be a part of this interview, and just giving me an opportunity to share some of my story, my friend.
Excellent. Thank you. We're very well spoken for being Russian.
You know how many people, I give people all the time, thank you, I appreciate good English tutoring.
Yeah.
But I give people all the time, like, man, I just one time, let me hear that Russian voice just one time. I can't get used to that English, So for all the fans out there, I say to you, thank you for being a part of the Russian Nightmare.
Excellent. Have yourself a wonderful day, Mr. Koloff, and we'll be in touch. Thank you very much.
Hey, happy Easter to everybody out there. Go celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, there you have it. First edition of Putting You Over, Coffee and Clotheslines with Nikita Koloff. Man, I enjoyed it. I did my best not to ask the same things. I'm sure he's heard. I'm sure I did. One thing I did want to ask him is, did he ever, I kind of like this camera angle on the Zoom. Maybe I should switch cameras. This is nice and up close to me. Get to see my beautiful face. Well, none of you guys can, but actually you could. If I do this, you could. Yeah, see? Look at that. My beautiful face. That close. Anyways, I thought it was great. I hope people out there enjoyed it. So it was fun. And yeah, man, the Russian Nightmare. You heard him. Send him those emails. Get in the book. But I'm on a coffee, so the show is hit its peak today. And I just want to thank everybody for coming in. Thanks for the questions. If you like what you see here, you can follow the Twitch. Always catch the show live. If you're watching this on YouTube, where's the camera? If you're watching this on YouTube, click subscribe. Just tell a friend. And that's all I really ask, is just tell someone. All right, everybody, stay safe, stay strong, and stay sane. Thank you.
This guy's called the Standing Streamer. I have the balls to say things that nobody else has the balls to say. The champ is here! Real stand-up kind of guy.
Hey, Brian Zane from Wrestling with Regret. You're watching Putting You Over.